Focus In with Teddi Florence, your introduction to the movers and shakers in Maryland and the surrounding states. And now, here's your host, Teddi Florence, with this week's guest.
Welcome to Focus In with Teddi, and thank you so much for clicking in. Today on the show, we have A. Dwight Pettit, who is a prominent attorney or lawyer in Baltimore City. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Tony, it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, you've been practicing law for many years and worked on some interesting cases. What was some of the toughest cases that you had to work on, and why was it so tough?
Well, you're right. I guess I've been in private practice now in Baltimore 32 years, I think, this coming summer. I started off, Teddy, with federal government, working with Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C. And so it has been a good 32 years, and that's a heck of a question that you asked, because I've had the opportunity to have so many outstanding and high-profile cases that it's very difficult. But I always start off with my favorite case, and that part is not a difficult question. That's because I had the opportunity to represent my father.
Okay.
After my father had integrated the schools in Aberdeen, Maryland, the government retaliated by not promoting him. He went something like 12 years without a promotion. He was a scientist engineer. And I had the opportunity to integrate Aberdeen High School, Thurgood Marshall, Juanita Jackson Mitchell, Tucker Daring, Jack Greenberg, but I didn't say Jack Greenberg, were my lawyers. So I had the opportunity to finish Aberdeen High School, go to Howard University, undergraduate, go to Howard University Law School, come back, take the Maryland bar, and take his case.
Wow.
And I was able to go before the United States Court of Claims, which is the second largest case court in the United States.
How did that make you feel?
It was a tremendous feeling to be able to give back something to your parents when they've done so much for you. He had sacrificed his whole career and our livelihood and where we lived. So much was directed at him in terms of retaliation. And to stand before the 7 learned judges of the U.S. Court of Claims with my mother, my father, and my wife standing behind me, and we won a 4-3 decision.
Wow.
Pettit versus the United States, which was the first case in the nation to award back pay to a federal employee for discrimination. And that was before Title VII. So that is always my biggest case.
So, but was you nervous when you took on that case?
Well, I was nervous, but I just felt it was sort of God's son. I'm very religious, and the way it developed, which is another whole story, and how I got into it. My father was like, he had lawyers in the case for years, and I called him up and I said, you know, your parents never really believe that you're a lawyer when you're at that age. I was 25, 26 years old. I said, Dad, I saw something in the paper. Could I work on your case? Sure, Dwight. The greatest minds in the world have been on my case, but working on my case, but you want to get the file and do whatever you can do.
Wow.
It was sort of funny to him until we began to look like we were going to have the opportunity.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, you were friends with Johnny Cochran, and I know it was a devastating loss to not just you, but I'm sure a lot of different people. You guys worked on several cases together. What does his loss mean to you, and what do you want people to know about Johnny?
Well, his loss was very devastating to me. We had, in a few years, established quite a bond. We had the opportunity, in fact, the irony of it, before I go back to the first question, is the day that I got the word that he had passed. I was working on a case and reading the pleadings that minute when my mother called me of a suit that we were getting ready to file together, the Cochran firm, which we did file even after it passed. But the first case we had the opportunity to work on was the Hubbard case here in Baltimore City, where a young man had been shot by the police in the back of the head while he was being handcuffed. And in theory, Billy Murphy, one of our outstanding lawyers in Baltimore City, for a long time, brought Johnny in, and but Johnny and I really befriended each other and really worked good together. And I guess what I would have to say is that what people probably already know, that he was such a real person.
He appeared that way in front of the camera.
He just, you know, everybody's in awe, and I'm looking at Johnny, and the whole world is looking at him, and he's like just relaxing. Plus, he's a Kappa brother, frat brother.
Okay. So that's something
we hit
in common.
right off because, you know, he's on the national level with Kappa and everything else, and sometimes we get into a little controversy, not controversy, but discussions of strategy. And Billy is very, very active and sometimes very aggressive. And so we'd sit back, and Johnny would say to me, "Dwight, let Billy do his thing. Let's just sit back and let's watch. If Billy's going to be Billy." But he had a way to just make everybody feel at home. One day we were here in Baltimore, and we were negotiating with the city solicitor over a possible settlement of the case. And the city solicitor turned, I won't call his name right now, but it was funny. Johnny asked him, he said, we had all these lawyers around the table in Kurt Smoke's office, and he asked the city solicitor, he said, who's going to try the case for you? And the city solicitor ran back and said, I'm trying it myself. Instead of, usually farming out. So Johnny just sat there, and he suddenly went into a very slow smile. He said, oh, you want to be famous, eh? And everybody thought about Dard to be.
Right.
All started. He said, I'll make you famous. So that's the kind of person he was. Mm-hmm. Just great people.
Yeah, down to earth. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Michael Jackson case. Did you call it?
Yes, I called that right on the button. I called the day and the verdict. And I just believe that reasonable doubt had been established.
Right.
And that I believe the prosecution in its vendetta and its determination to get Michael for something at some point in time, that they overcharged. Mm-hmm. And when they overcharged, if they'd have stayed right with the aspect of a pedophile or right with the aspect of child abuse, they might have had a decent opportunity to get a conviction. But when they opened the door in terms of expansion to conspiracy and kidnapping and what have you, then it worked in the benefit of the defense eventually, because it gave the defense so many opportunities to attack the mother and to take pot shots at different witnesses. Also, I think what we thought was going to hurt, I thought initially was going to be devastating by letting in prior bad acts, which could only happen in California under California law. But by doing that, the defense was able to bring the actual persons who had been alleged to be victims right into court, and these people who were really contradicting hearsay evidence. The state had put on hearsay, I saw, I think, I felt, I was told. Well, the defense turned around and brought the actual young men in and said, hey, it didn't happen.
Right.
Now, we know Michael has a problem. I mean, we know that there's a philosophical problem there.
Definitely.
You just can't be out here sleeping with young people that are not your children.
Right.
And when he made that statement, Michael opened the doors on himself. Because remember, this prosecution, these acts with this young man came after that national
interview that he had.
Right. And all those events occurred afterwards. They didn't occur up front. So by him doing that interview, he sort of opened the door for those people who would have economic aspirations. And so he laid that, but I think I would hope that Michael understands now
the seriousness, that it's just not normal to sleep with little boys.
Right.
Even though it might have been totally innocent, but the perception.
The perception. And there's nowhere in the world you can sit up and tell the world that you're sleeping with children. And people wouldn't accept it, of course, if it was a female, so why would they should accept it if it's males? Right. And they're still children, whether they be male or female. So I think also the grace of God. I think Michael was very fortunate. I think some things broke in his favor. And I think, again, the overzealousness of the prosecution led to the prosecution's downfall. And justice was served.
You think it'll hurt his career or bolster his career?
I don't think he'll ever have the popularity that he enjoyed, but he will have the economic wherewithal. Michael, nobody should feel sorry for Michael being broke.
Right.
I mean, Michael's going to get millions of dollars for interviews. He's going to get millions when he has traveling
appearances,
tours again. Anything he does, he's going to be highly, highly in demand. Because now he was already a cult figure, but now he becomes a cult figure in another realm. And so you can separate him from O.J. Simpson, because O.J. Simpson's conviction was a whole different story that obviously alienated America and the world, because it was a murder case, and obviously we know all the racial implications involved. I don't think Michael will suffer that kind of persecution. I do think that he will battle back financially and will be very much in demand. But I do think that this prosecutor is going to retire in a year, but he's still there.
Right, true.
And he's indicated if he gets another complaint, we could be right back.
And he's probably going to be looking for a complaint.
He's going to be looking for. He won't release the pictures. The pictures that Michael is talking about are the pictures of the first case back in 1993, where the young man identified very specific items in terms of his genitalia. Mm-hmm. And they won't release those pictures. And I think that's a part of arrogance and defiance and being a bad sport. Mm-hmm. But the implication is I'm going to maintain this for evidence, and if you slip up,
that's right.
But then on the other hand, with a warning like this, like a lot of people have said, people who were very happy with the verdict said, Michael, you're going to get in trouble again. Oh, and nobody's going to be with you.
Yeah, true.
I agree. This was too much stress to take the
and he looked weak and nervous and scared himself. So I think he learned his lesson.
Okay, I don't think it's anything much scarier than jail, other than when a doctor advises you that you have a terminal illness.
That's true.
But than that, that's about the worst news that you could be expecting.
Definitely. You have a book. Let's talk about your book. It's an autobiography.
Well, let's say I'm finishing a book.
You're finishing. Well, you're finishing. But how close is it to being done? And what is it about?
I'm in the stages of proofing, and it's been floated around to a great extent, and I think it's a lot of substance there. And I've had a very, very exciting career that a lot of people are not aware of, and I think when people do become aware of it, the book will be quite interesting. Even from where I started, I'm probably the only person maybe in the nation who's been reported in all 3 federal courts, the integration of the schools, Pettit versus Board of Education, my father's case that I mentioned. Prior to that, Pettit versus the Board of Law Examiners, which was the first case in the nation to integrate the bar examinations, and this was filed across the nation after my case. A lot of people don't realize that being a lawyer was not just something that you could go to school. There was still great prejudices in terms of allowing African Americans to be lawyers. It could let you be, in mind you being a mortician, didn't mind you being those type of professions, not to put those professions down, but those type of professions which a lot of white people didn't want anyway because they didn't want to work in that close proximity to African Americans. But other professions like accounting, law, things dealing with money, organization, and politics, we were historically excluded. So the book starts off with that, and then I just had great opportunities. Like I met Jimmy Carter very early, and I became his state co-chairman in the 1976 election. And I talk about the politics of that and the presidential campaign. And I go from there to just a lot of things that I've been involved in terms of high-profile cases. And Jesse Jackson's campaign, I was his city chairman when he ran the first time.
This sounds like a movie.
When I start telling people about things, they're like, how could you have done all of this?
Right.
But it's been a fascinating situation that God has just put me in a lot of places where and then I had my own political campaigns. We won't talk too much about that because they weren't successful.
Right, but still.
The Lord wasn't ready for me to do that.
Right, exactly.
He wanted me to practice law and stay in the churches.
And you're doing a phenomenal job, so.
Thank you. And so between the politics, between the cases that I've handled, and some of the cases, it's going to be quite surprising when people see some of the areas that I've had the opportunity to be exposed in terms of representation. Folks where I never thought a little young African-American kid would have the opportunity, especially at the age that I was, to be playing in those leagues, both in criminal law as well as personal injury, as well as constitutional and civil rights law.
How old were you when you started
practicing? I guess I came back home to Baltimore because Baltimore was my home. I went I grew up in Turner Station, Baltimore City, Turner Station, and my mother moved to Aberdeen, which was a big cultural shock when I was about 13. So then I went away to Howard University undergraduate in law school. So when I came back home to Baltimore City, it was almost like a lot of people did not know that I in fact grew up here. And I guess I was approximately about 27, 28 years old.
Wow.
And came back and was naive enough. I started off with my law partner at the time was Mitchell and Pettit, And we graduated to a larger firm, Mitchell, Pettit, Davis and Gill. Davis is now Judge Davis on the Court of Special Appeals.
Okay.
Roberta Gill was with the state now. And Michael Mitchell, and Michael went on to be state senator and a council person. So we had a very high-powered, young African-American firm. People joined us, like Judge Cliff Gordy was with us for a while, and others that have moved on to very prominent careers. So I was naive enough to just think that you come home, you put up a sign, and people
will come
knocking on your door. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, I didn't really discover until years later when my kids were both in college at the same time. And I really had to think about the finances.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I discovered television. So I started doing commercials. I don't know if you remember my saying was, if you need me, call me.
Oh, no.
And that became very, very popular in the 80s and 90s. I guess I ran commercials for about 10 years.
Well, it worked. It paid off.
It got the kids through college.
That's right. That's right. Whatever works.
Whatever works. Exactly.
So when will the book be done? You have any idea? Target date?
I had targeted this year.
Okay.
But again, like I said, all the substantive aspect has been written and done. And basically, I'm in the process of proofing, but it's just so many different things have happened or happening. I have several high-profile cases now.
Okay.
It seems like, and I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I came out of several big high-profile cases. I think of all the police cases in the country right now, I might have handled more than most lawyers share. I had the Quarles case, which was very big in Baltimore City. It was national. A young man shot at Lexington Market. I had the case that I indicated.
Oh, I can't remember that.
One with Hubbard, with Cochran and Billy. I had the one with McCoy, where the kid was shot 4 times on his knees on Thanksgiving Day. And then I had the Stinnett case, a very high-profile murder case where the kid rammed a police car at 104 miles an hour. And
that was pretty recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, we tried that about 2 years ago. I was not get a guilty verdict. And as a result of that, I did several major murder cases throughout the state. And so we were so busy, what I do, I take the book with me in sections, and I'm waiting for a jury or waiting for a judge.
Right.
I try to proof it, but then the book goes into a lot of that. Then I got back into politics again, even though I didn't run, but with the coming of Governor Ehrlich, I worked for him and his election, and then he appointed me to the Board of Regents, which is a great honor. I mean, being involved with an institution which controls and operates 13 institutions in the state of Maryland and a $3 billion budget. But the time consumption they never told me about, and it doesn't pay.
Oh, my goodness gracious almighty.
It doesn't pay dollars.
Well, but the title sounds nice.
The responsibility, the title is nice and the responsibility is awesome. I'm the only regent from Baltimore City on the Board of Regents, and I'm only one of 2 blacks out of 17 on the Board of Regents.
Wow.
And that covers everything from Coppin to Bowie, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Towson, Baltimore, University of Baltimore Division, University of Baltimore County, and so forth and so on.
Great. Well, we're running out of time, and thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. Would you come back and see us again?
Okay, this has been such an honor and my privilege, and thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come back, and hopefully I'll be back when I get the book published.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for focusing in with Ted.